So it's time to talk about the Rune. I've had this thing for a little while now. Went through a period where I didn't ride really at all. Injuries and whatnot, back issue. But apart from that, I've been trying to dial it in here and there, and now that I'm back kind of in full swing, my back's still playing up, but I'm riding normal. I'm having trouble finding compliance in this rear end, which I have from the start. Before I hurt my back, I was going through Super Deluxe Air with the Mag-Neg, this shock, a RockShox Super Deluxe coil, and I've been up and down with spring rates. I'm currently on a 297 Olin spring with minimal preload, basically just enough preload that when it fully extends, when the bike fully extends, it's not free playing here. So 297 is the only spring I can get any compliance out of, but it's only compliant in places. I've ridden a few different Banshees. I've ridden the Titan, which was killer. That had a DHX2 coil. I ran a 350 Fox spring, which is the equivalent to probably this 300 or maybe more like a 320 Olin's. So that suspension platform actually worked quite well, and they're very similar. It's the same KS2 suspension, but they've all got different, slightly different curves. The what was it? The Phantom? Yeah, the Phantom V3. That was a hitter. That was killer. That was 115, 130. Worked really, really well. This bike, I said initially when I first reviewed the Banshee, the orange one, a couple of years ago, that I thought it would be better with a better shock. I had the Float X2 on it. Now, upon reflection, I've been through so many different shocks now on this bike and so many different tunes and so many different setups. I think maybe the Float X2 is probably the shock for it. You're not going to get much better. I don't think you're going to get much better. I've tried and this is the hardest bike I've ever had to set up, if I'm honest. Which is kind of sad because I love these frames, I love the bikes, I love the brand, but I can't get the joy out of this bike. When I'm on fast, flat terrain, like Bennett's is a good example. Bennett's is quite flat, like not flat as in topography. It's flat as in. Better example would be smooth. It's smooth. It's a smooth trail, or a bunch of smooth trails with a little bit of chatter in it. Still pretty fresh. Not a lot of break and bumps or anything like that. So it feels killer. It feels really good. If I was to go somewhere where I can just flex smooth, fast hits, it feels killer. But whenever I'm in the real rowdy stuff, I can't hang on to it. I'm struggling to hang on to it. Maybe partially the lyric is a little bit harsh. I don't think so. The lyric's been killer. Old seals probably needs some fresh seals. These wheels, so I've got the Fun Phantom on the front. That is significantly stiffer and harsher than my Bontrager 28-hole hub that came on the Slash. And this rear, this Flow MK3, is significantly harsher than the EX471 29er I have on the Slash. When I was going back and forth with Mullet versus 29er on the Slash, this wheel felt really harsh. So I don't know if it's just the wheel build. I don't know what it is, and I can't say it's because it's a 27, because I've done this a million times with different bikes. I've had 27s, I've had 29ers, I've had it all, and the general consensus for me is when I put a 27 out the back, it's more compliant. It's a little softer, it feels a little soggier, a little less momentum, so you got to tune your suspension to suit the smaller wheel out the back. But it's less of this, less inertia going on when you're going through the rough stuff. So this is still rough. I'm really not sure where to go with it. I'm going to go out again today and play more, see if I can go a heap of... the more compression I add, the rougher it gets. I go less and it gets hollow. So, there's a spot in the middle there that's kind of good for compression on certain tracks that you got to change for different tracks. It's got a very, very small window of performance, I think. I'm 22 to 23 millimeters of sag, so well and truly 35% sag. any higher than that, so I go a 320 Ölands, I just cannot ride it on anything bumpy. And it actually feels a little more sluggish. Like, it feels good in some spots, but it's heaps more sluggish on the trail. 343 Ölands stands up like a stink pig, and it's just horrible. It doesn't handle well. It feels like the front end's always going to tuck under you. When I went full 27, so I started as a full 27 and eventually went to 29er. So full 27 with a 37mm offset fork, felt like the front end was under me and like really tight and like awkward. It was cool, like it was good. It felt like an old school bike again. It felt like how the old school bikes used to feel, but not a lot of confidence. Just still ding 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 bouncing around off stuff. And to be honest, I reckon I got better compliance. So I spent a brief. I only pretty much did a couple of sections on it. I had the Marzocchi Bomber, which had an odd tune. A friend of mine lent it to me, but with the 350 Fox spring, and it felt really good. It felt as good as I can get this for sure. Even with it had a really slow rebound tune. So even at full fast, it was just a slow rebound. So that probably felt as good as it's felt, I think. But saying that, I only tested it in 1 or 2 spots, and this feels really good in 1 or 2 spots. This shock here feels really good in 1 or 2 spots. But then you go somewhere else and it's rough as guts. Fox Creek, I could not even hang on to. I would have been better off wearing a mouth guard when I went to Fox Creek. That's how harsh it felt. It's truly the hardest bike I've ever had to set up. It truly is. It's sad because, you know, these guys are cool. They kind of looked after me a little bit on the price of the frame, not a lot, but you know, he gave me a bit of a discount, so that was nice. But I just can't get along with it. I should, in hindsight, I should have got the Titan and set it up as because my plan initially was I want a 27.5 bike again. I want to be playing and dancing around on the smaller wheels, the smaller bike, the lighter setup. And I just couldn't make this work. Like, my Patrol was killer. That was full 27, geo matched for, you know, just to party. It was killer. This, I just cannot get it like that. I can't get it like that. So I went to the 29er fork, the longer offset, to get the wheel from being, instead of being under me, being out the front of me a little bit to match the 40mm stem and whatnot. That made a big difference. So that brought the front end out and gave me the ability to have the front end in front of me. You know, you call it the front end, it wants to be in front. As a 27.5, you might as well have called it, or as with the short offset, might as well have called it the under end, because it's under you instead of in front of you. So I kept the 27.5 wheel on, but went the 29er fork just to bring the offset out longer, and it made the height slight, you know, touch taller at the front, maybe 10 millimeters taller or something like that, 5-10 mil, and it was instantly better. Then I put the 29er wheel on it, which jacked the front up more and obviously did some other stuff to the geo, and it was better again. It was like, oh yeah, now I can push the front into things and it's well and truly in front of me and there for me. And then it came to, right, I'm happy where that's sitting, geometry wise everything's cool. Now I'm going to fine tune the ride height at the back because I've got no idea what's going on there. So kept going back and forth. 22 to 23 mil sag is the only place that felt good. Even with the all the different air shocks. I even tried this one. So my old DPX2 off the Patrol, serviced it, feels good, feels killer, but it's just, this is way too progressive for this bike. So this bike's quite progressive. And the funny thing about it is, it's progressive all the way, like it bubbles out and then it drops off. Instead of progressing like that, instead of like, you know, more, and most at the top, it goes heaps, less. And so when you do get it soft enough to get compliance in the middle and throughout the travel, there's nothing at the end of the travel to stop you. So the only answer really would be the new Super Deluxe coil if I was to stick with a coil. An air shock, you can, if the air shock's not too progressive, so the Float X2 is less progressive than this, it's got a better range of tuning with that air can. This just belongs on linear bikes, 11%, you know, 8%, 5%, up to 15% maybe. You can probably squeeze 18% out of it, but it'd start to be getting real quite harsh, and depending on where your ride height should be on that bike, yeah, digressing. But back to it, yeah, 22 to 23 mil sag is the only place I can make this thing really feel like I can throw it into things, geometry wise, and still be in a great position to handle how rough and horrible it is. I shouldn't say horrible, how rough and not confidence inspiring it is. So I really don't know where to go with it. I don't want to keep pouring money saying that. I could get this is a 205 by 65. I can get a 205 by 65 Super Deluxe when they do come in stock. It seemed to be very, very hard to find, which is, is what it is. Everyone wants them. And use that, set it light. But then I run into the trouble of the 300 RockShox spring, which I've also tried on this coil, is too stiff. So 300 RockShox is stiffer by about, it might be 15-20 pounds stiffer than this 297. It's noticeably stiffer. I got noticeably more bottom out resistance on that spring, and it feels a little softer off the top. Maybe, like just in that very top bit, it's just a little more fluttery, but then it's more ramp. Coils are always linear. I don't know if they are always exactly the same. I think some maybe have just a slightly different shape. Now, they all progress linearly or consistently, whereas an air spring you can make it progress consistently, you can make it progress exponentially, or on some frames you can also make it the other way a little bit. Kind of, that's, don't give too much weight to that last bit. But that's, it's deep, complex thought. But, so, the Rune, I don't know what to say. It's high-ish on the back, but that's fine because you end up running it deep sag for it to handle well anyway, so that eliminates the high seat height at the back. The front end, long top tube, but I'm not super high at the front. I'm only 1075, 1080, I think. Reach feels quite short, it doesn't feel long, doesn't feel big. It's a 470 with a 1239-ish or 1240 wheelbase. They say it's 437 or 438 chainstay, but I've measured it multiple times at about 440. I'll measure it right here for you. So if we're going centre of that bolt to the centre of the crank is 440, maybe 441. So good chainstay. I like that length. I'm not complaining about that. That's a good chainstay length for this kind of reach. The frame, stiff as a board, and maybe that's what I'm feeling too. Maybe it's a combination of stiff wheels, stiff frame, and not a great suspension platform that's putting me in this position of I'm not really enjoying riding the bike. So I've said it to friends before, bike depression is a real thing. When your bike doesn't feel good, everyone's got all sorts of stuff going on in their life, but I think if your bike doesn't feel good and you really love riding your bike, it can make the rest of your life seem a little less rosy, I think. Maybe that's a little crazy, maybe that's a little too committed to riding bikes, but that's the real thing. So life's too short to ride shit bikes. I'm not saying this is a shit bike at all. This thing is killer. Smooth trails, jumps. You set it up stiff enough to not bottom out, so just one spring up, and this thing jumps everything. Just feels stiff feels like a dirt jumper. It feels like a dirt jumper that you can have on a trail. So I guess bike parky kind of bike, but I can't get away from that harshness in the suspension. I just can't get away from it. So on the bright side, continuing on with what I just said about life's too short to ride shit bikes, everybody's been hounding me to buy an e-bike. Why don't you get an e-bike? Why don't you get an e-bike? You love them, blah, blah, blah. And yes, I do. I absolutely love them. But I hate the restrictions. I hate the fact that I'd lose my warranty if I did get a restrictor. I hate the fact that they're still heavy, like ba-ding-ding-ding-ding-ding, like clunky and stuff like that. I think we made a lot of progress to get e-bikes here, and then in the last 5 or 6 years, or 4 years, we've done nothing to progress the quality and refinement of the motors. and the refinement of the rules. So I've blabbed on about the rules. It doesn't matter. But anyway, so on that note, I've ordered a new bike, and I don't want to seem like I'm quitting, because I'm not. I'm not going to just sell this. I'm going to keep working on this and use the other bike as a palate cleanser. Hopefully that one's good as well. And you never know when you're dipping into something new. So I'm going to use the other bike as a palate cleanser to go back and forth. It comes with the same size shock, so I can go back and forth with the shock, and it gives me that window to, oh yeah, maybe I will buy a top end shock and chuck it on and see if it's, see if I can make it work with a better shock or whatever. Again, with going back to the 300 spring, I didn't finish that, and I'm not finishing this either, but anyway. The 300 spring on the RockShox was too stiff, so if I do buy RockShox, it's a 38mm diameter spring, so you can't just chuck an Öhlins on there or chuck a Fox spring on there. It's a bigger spring, wider internal diameter. So I need to get the nuke proof, which seems to be the best value for money size, large size spring. So the nuke proof is, I think it's $110 for a super light steel, or their idea of the light steel. A friend of mine just got a 275 because he's got the same problem with the RockShox. You can't get the spring light enough for him. He's about 65 kilos on an Alpine trail, non-e-bike, Marin Alpine trail, and the 300 was just kicking him. It was just kicking him constantly. So he's gone to the 275, and it seems like it's much better. So more compliance, and probably pedals better. People go, no, you go stiffer, it'll pedal better. It'll be more efficient, less bob. But these things are designed, all bikes are designed to have, or they just accidentally designed to have the best pedaling performance at a certain sag, regardless of how much spring you're pushing against, because of the way the curve works and whatnot, and anti-squat, anti-rise, and all that technical stuff, all the bookworm stuff. So I'd have to go a 275 spring, and who knows if the 275 would be equivalent to a 275 RockShox. Then you're playing that game again of springs aren't calibrated to other springs. They've all got their own numbers printed on them, but they don't. They're not congruent with each other. They're not all the same. So that's another con in the column for the coil shock versus the air shock. But anyway, back to the new bike situation. I just ordered a Giant Rein. I just ordered one of the new Giant Reins. It's going to be killer. It might not be killer. It might be garbage. It might be like, oh, they're really not improving much. Or it could be hit out the park. I always used to ride Giants and I loved it. I was a Giant fanboy. Loved my 2008 Glory. Loved my 2010 Glory. Had to get that replaced with a 2011 Glory. Loved that. Loved my 2015 Reign. And then 2018 I raced the Nationals here. The Gravity Enduro Nationals in Elite on a borrowed brand new Reign, a 2018 Reign. Shout out to Yatesy for hooking me up with that. Raced that, came 14th in Elites, which was a big result for me. I was pretty stoked. Got a couple of top 10 results on stages, and loved that bike, but couldn't really get a good deal on it, so I didn't buy it, and I bought a Trek instead. And the Trek was killer, the Remedy was killer, and then I went to the Patrol, and then I went to the Slash, and then from the Slash to here, and now I'm going back to Giant, so back home, it feels like. I've been waiting for them to release a good Rein, and I've always said if they drop one that suits, and it seems to me like it's got all the bits in the right spots, I'm buying it in a heartbeat. And they dropped it, so I ordered one. I could rant for days right now. I could just talk, but that's all for this video. It's a shame I don't have better things to say about this bike. Maybe the handlebar. I'm using stuff that I haven't used before either. Fun Phantom wheels, harsh or stiff. Fun Fanatic or something. Fun handlebar. I can't remember what it is, but that may be stiff. And everything else is what I know. Also, for all of you guys that have stuck around to the end, here's a little tip. Don't buy SRAM cassettes anymore. They're garbage. SRAM cassettes are garbage. I've always run them and I've always liked them, but now this bike going to SLX cassette with SRAM everything else. So I've got a SRAM chain, I've got a SRAM derailleur, which the clutch is flogged even though it's done bugger all work. These clutches are garbage, but I like having this button to take the wheel on and off, so I won't go Shimano for that. But the Shimano cassette shifts way better, way more consistently, and it's always right on the nose, like click, bang, click, bang, click, bang, click, bang. There's no, oh, there it goes. Like, you don't get caught short. Sometimes it'll go too quick, but you never get caught short like waiting for it to change gears. As long as your derailleur hanger's straight, your cables tension right and clean, you can't go wrong. So SRAM everything else, Shimano cassettes. So Shimano hub, you know, to allow for a 12-speed cassette. Enough's enough. I keep blabbering. Banshee, sorry that couldn't be better, but yeah, I should have got the Titan, but is what it is.